Hey everybody, my name is Sandy Mill. I'm the Admissions Director at Sidney Sussex College, part of the University of Cambridge. And in this video, part of our Access Sydney series, looking at every single part of the Cambridge admissions process, I'm going to tackle probably the part of the process that I get the most amount of questions regarding each year, and that's the personal statement. Now, this is part of the admissions process, causes a lot of angst, a lot of worry amongst prospective applicants. And the reason for that is actually because it's one of the very few parts of the application process that you actually have any control over whatsoever. Most of the admissions process, you're just kind of plugging in data that you've already got or someone else has got control over it. On your UCAS form, you're putting in your grades that you've got, the subjects that you're doing, your home address, your email address, and your date of birth, and you can't really do much to affect those at this current point in time. Your teacher assessment and your teacher reference, well, they have control over that, and you probably shouldn't be able to influence what they're saying if we're being quite honest. But the personal statement is all you. You've got a blank sheet in front of you, a chance to really put yourself forward, tell these universities a bit about yourself, and of course, you feel the pressure at that point. It's something that really matters. You want to show yourself in the best light, but the big question is, well, how do we do that? This is going to be a two-part series looking at personal statements. In this video, we're going to look specifically at how to do that first draft, how to approach the personal statement and get it in a form and a shape that is doing what you want it to do. In the second video, we're going to come back and we're going to look at the redrafting process and how you can refine that personal statement and turn it into something really absolutely fantastic. And the skills that you use with that should be able to apply for many other things as well, including essays, job applications, pretty much anything where a redrafting and editing process is going to be necessary. So for the time being, we're talking first drafts. Let's get straight into it. So the first thing to think about with personal statements, the first thing to really understand is why we ask for them. What's the point? Because if we're being honest, it would be easier for absolutely everybody if we didn't ask for a personal statement as part of our admissions processes. It'd be far easier for us because we wouldn't have to read them, process them, take them into account in decision making. It'd be far easier for you because you don't have to think them up and write them and have all that stress and worry that comes with it. So you'd hope that there is a value to them, and there absolutely is. The personal statement is one of the few times in the application that we really get the chance to get in your head, to find out what really interests you, how you think, how you operate, how you work as a potential student. We can't get that just from facts and figures and data, all the sorts of things you can put in a spreadsheet. We need to hear your voice. We need to get an idea of what makes you tick as a prospective student. It gives us ideas as to why you want to study the subjects that you do. It gives us ideas as to how you think, the things that you think are important or are great ideas or terrible, and why. It's that first chance to get a look at you as that prospective university student. And it has even more importance for those universities that don't interview. For a university like Cambridge, it's not as important as you might think. We'll look at it, and a good one can most certainly help an applicant shine, and one that's a bit less good can take the shine off an otherwise very good applicant. But at the end of the day, we get other opportunities to see you and the way that you think through our interview process. For many other universities that don't carry out interviews in many subjects, this is that one opportunity for you to really get your personality across, for you to get your ideas across, for you to get that sort of style of a student that you want to be out and into consideration. So it's more important for those universities than it is for us typically. I've only ever heard of one personal statement in the university be a cause for someone to be deselected, and that one was somewhat legally troubling, let's just say. So, to get it wrong, you have to really, really get it wrong. But as we said, a good one can really help an applicant shine, and that's what everyone is aiming for. So let's think about the process and how we can really make those personal statements shine when we're going into this very first draft of them. So, to understand a little bit more about these applications, actually, we look at a vast amount of information. We look at your GCSE grades, UMS scores from AS levels if you've got them, everything from your UCAS application, all of this data. We've got the supplementary application questionnaire, little extra questionnaire that we send out just at Cambridge to find out a bit more about what you've studied and your reasons for applying here. We look at your teacher references, written work, contextual data, any admissions assessments that you do, interviews, extenuating circumstances, the whole shebang. And the personal statement is just one element of this. Now, we look at our information holistically at Cambridge. No one element of these is more important than the others. There is not a single one of these that is the be-all and the end-all. Instead, we like to take all that information, combine it all together to build a picture of our applicants, because you are more than just data on a page to us. You know, if we wanted to, we could just judge you on your predicted grades, teacher references, etc. We could just treat you as an entry on a spreadsheet, but we don't, because human beings, people, are more than just an entry on a spreadsheet, or at least I really, really hope so. We want to see how you think, your priorities, your way of approaching the subject that you love, because that plays into the way that we teach at Cambridge and that supervision system. So that personal statement is the first chance to get these ideas across. It's not going to be the be-all and end-all in your application, but it is an element that, of course, you want to get right, because you want to get everything right in your applications. We're going to see how you can approach that right from the beginning. Now, the most important principle when it comes down to a personal statement, and in fact any piece of work that you do, is always target audience. It's a really simple idea. You probably already know what this means. Target audience is who you're aiming your piece of work at. And it applies to almost everything in life, from essays that you write in school, to every single job or university application, to every single, piece of creative arts that many people do, all sorts of things that people do as part of their work as well. If you know what your target audience is, and you can effectively deliver what that target audience needs in a clear and obvious way, you're typically more likely to succeed. And everything works on this principle if it's effective. You see this in so many elements of life. To give you a few examples, you do this at school already with your exams. You use the mark schemes, yeah? Now, mark scheme is basically telling you what the target audience, the examiners, want to see. And if you can deliver all the things on the mark scheme, you get the marks and then you get the top grades. Nice and simple. It works on almost everything else in life as well. Advertising is the key for this. Almost every single advert is pinpoint laser focused on its target audience to try and appeal to them, their sensibilities, their way of life, to make them think, oh, I need this product. It's something that I really want to have in my life. Look at any advert on TV. And when you watch it, think, okay, who is this aimed at? Adverts at kids are, full of bright colours and excitement to try and encourage them to, get mad about this product and then really want to get it, or get their parents to get it if we're being really cynical. It used to be the case that almost every advert for, say, washing up liquid was picturing, a housewife at home, maybe a kid comes in causing a huge amount of mess, or a dog or something like that, designed to try and hit that sort of housewife demographic. Things are thankfully changing as we realise that it's not just, middle-aged mothers who buy washing up liquid anymore, but the whole point is they're designed to target emotionally, rationally, the people that they're aiming the product at. Cynical, isn't it? But it's what makes them effective. So when it comes down to your target audience for a personal statement, if you understand them, if you understand what their needs are and what they're looking for, then your personal statement is more likely to be successful. So the question then becomes, okay, who is the target audience for our personal statements? And the answer is people like me, the admissions directors or admissions tutors at the Cambridge colleges or the universities at which you're applying to. Nice and simple. So if you can work out what we're looking for, and you can gear your personal statement towards delivering those things, it's much more likely to be successful. So, what are we looking for? What are we looking for from a prospective student that is going to make them more appealing to us in terms of wanting to let them into the university, thinking, yeah, they're going to be a great student who's going to thrive. And at the end of the day, we're looking for that university-ready student, someone who's going to come in and absolutely do well without having to, cause a lot of problems or adapt hugely. They've got all the skills and abilities ready to succeed. There's a myth that goes around that universities are looking for a well-rounded person. And you'll hear a lot of teachers and some parents still say this. And that once was kind of a big priority amongst universities. But for a top university, such as Cambridge and many of the other Russell Group ones as well, Nowadays, what we're really interested in more than that is that university-ready student, someone who's got the skills and ability to come in and thrive from the get-go. So what sort of things contribute to this? Having a passion for the subject is vital. It shows that it's something that matters to you. We do better at what we're passionate about. If it means something to us, we're going to put that extra effort in. We want to see that you've got the academic ability to succeed. It's good grades, the ability to be able to work in the way that a university student does. That includes having some self-motivation, being able to go out and do the work yourself, being a researcher, able to go out and find information on your own without having your hand held every single step of the way. Be willing to go and explore and find things out for yourself. We're looking for people who have got a level of resilience, who can take on a varied and large workload and still manage to get things done and thrive even in that situation. For some subjects, communication skills are vital, particularly subjects like medicine maybe, where you might be interacting with patients. Or depending on how the university teaches, many arts and humanities subjects where there are lots of seminars and group work. Reasoning skills, critical thinking skills, vital in particular subjects. Your ability to write a good essay, structure an argument well. And in some subjects as well, professional commitment for things like dentistry, veterinary, medicine. Now, it varies a little bit between subjects, what they're looking for. But if you think about what skills are going to make a brilliant student in your subject, you're on the right lines. And what I'd do is start making a little list of those things that would be really, really great to see from a student in your particular subject of choice at your university of choice, whether it's Cambridge or elsewhere. Think about how the subject is taught, think about the course content, because those things will play into this. Problem solved then. If we know that we've got to show all these things, brilliant. We know what we're aiming at. Now, unfortunately, it is a little bit more complicated than that, because there are two extra factors that are going to make this slightly tougher before it gets better. But what we want to do right now is make sure we understand the challenge that is ahead of us with the personal statement so we can then meet it, give ourselves the mark scheme effectively. So it's not just about saying that you've got all these skills, because at the end of the day, if we're being quite honest, anyone can claim anything they like about themselves. Look at any politician on Twitter for your example of this. We can claim whatever we like about ourselves in life. The internet has only made this worse. What we need to provide actually is evidence. I can tell you, for example, that I was once in consideration for the UK Winter Olympic downhill skiing team when I was a little bit younger. I can tell you that I was once a DJ on BBC Radio 1. I can tell you that my mum once left me at a petrol station when I was 5 years old because I got out the car to use the loo when she wasn't looking, and she didn't realise I'd gone until she was 2 miles down the road. Do you believe any of that? Should you believe any of that? I can tell you that one of those is true. But I mean, do you believe that? Have you got any reason to believe that? My point is, we need evidence. We need to actually have the evidence to prove that we are who we say we are what we claim. I actually have the audio files from the time that I did DJ a radio show on Radio 1, and that would show it. I'm not going to share them on this video, that would embarrass myself on the internet. But my point being, we need to evidence that we have these skills. And just to make this a little bit harder, we've got to do that in very short space. So for the personal statement, you have 4,000 characters exactly. That includes spaces, and paragraph markers as well count as one space, and punctuation as well. So in reality, it is exactly this much space. It does carry on underneath my picture here. It's small enough that I can fit it legibly on one PowerPoint slide in size 15 text. 4,000 characters is not a lot of space. Typically around 4 to 5 good-sized paragraphs. And that's the extent of the challenge. We've got to show that we have all these skills that are going to make us a fantastic university student, show us a little bit about our personality, our style of learning, the things that interest us, and evidence all of that in that amount of space. And there is the challenge. So the question then becomes, how can we do this? Once you know the extent of the challenge, you know the extent of the problem, that means you've got the clearest image on how you can solve it. And in fact, it's not too complex. There are some easy ways of demonstrating that you are a university-ready student. And this links back to a previous video, which I have done on preparing yourself for competitive university applications. At this point, if you haven't watched that video, I highly advise it, because that sets out a lot of what we're going to be talking about going forwards, and I'll remind you a little bit of it in the process. But if you want a deeper dive into that, that is available on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Sidney Sussex College. So you've got more in-depth information on this. Because the answer to the question of how do we demonstrate and evidence that we have got all these skills to make us a brilliant university student, the answer to it is your super curricular study. Your personal statements should be discussing relevant evidence that shows you've got the skills and abilities to be a university ready student, and that evidence is the super curricular activity that you've undertaken, that geeking out about the subject that you love. It demonstrates that you've got these skills, it shows it. And if you want proof of that, and I think that's a reasonable thing to ask for given everything I've said so far, let's run through a few examples here. It shows that you've got passion for the subject because you've spent your valuable free time doing some extra study. It shows that you're motivated because you got up out of bed, you spent that time doing it. It shows resilience because you've managed it around your A-levels and your complex workload and everything else that's going on in the world right now. It shows that you've got independent study skills and research ability because you've gone out and found things to read and do that reflect your subject and have allowed you to get into more depth about it. You can try this for all the other things that we've mentioned. Supercurricular study is a great way of demonstrating that you have all of these skills and abilities. So a quick recap, supercurricular study is anything you do in your spare time that is relevant to the subjects that you want to study, that isn't part of your A-level course content, although of course if it's part of a Welsh Baccalaureate project or maybe an EPQ, that still counts, and has also got good quality academic content in it. Anything that meets those criteria is supercurricular, and that is what your personal statements should be based around. So, for a Cambridge personal statement, and we'll include Oxford in here as well, why not? We'd say that 80% plus of your personal statement should be about your supercurricular activity. That's going to demonstrate you as a university-ready student. Now, some other universities are more concerned with the well-rounded person, and I would use the other 20% to talk about extracurricular activity and try to tease out some of the relevant skills or abilities that you've got from it that really show and link back to that idea of being ready for university, that show that you've got some great skills that are going to apply. Now, if we're talking about 4 to 5 paragraph personal statement, as we've already said, probably around 1 paragraph maximum talking about those extracurricular activities, and the rest of it really focusing on the supercurricular and picking out the very best things that you've done and talking about them in some detail and in some depth. So, now that we understand the challenge, let's talk about how to actually approach this personal statement for the first time. And my first bit of advice is whatever you do, ignore Mary Poppins. The beginning is not a very good place to start. It's probably the worst place to start, in fact. You put all that pressure on yourself trying to think of a really good intro and how to start it, forget it. Go for the middle. Start with your supercurricular activity. The main chunk of what you want to be talking about. Because that's kind of what it's all about. That's what you're doing it for. The rest of it is just kind of what is holding it together, your introduction, your conclusion, etc. It's kind of like when you go for a sandwich, say you go to a sandwich shop, you're going to order a sandwich. You never really start with the bread when you're working out your order. The main thing is the filling. Yeah, you want to work out, okay, what's my filling going to be? What do I really fancy? And then you want to have, enough bread to hold it together, basically. Just enough bread to hold it together. The more filling, the better value you feel like you're getting for the sandwich, yeah? So what we want to do is maximize that stuff, talking about the personal statement, talking about that supercurricular study, that filling of your sandwich, and then the intro, the conclusion, we can put that on either side at the end of it, and that's our bread to hold it all together. So start with the filling, start with that supercurricular activity, and everything else can be based around it. So start in the middle. What I would do, content is king, always start with that middle content. Think about, okay, what experiences have you done or got that show these elements that you listed earlier as the things that the admissions tutor is going to want to see? What supercurricular activity have you done? Start picking out some different varieties, some different things that you've done that shows different things about yourself. And those are the ones you might want to start focusing on in terms of writing a paragraph about. Or try writing some paragraphs about a number of things that you've done and see which ones turn out the best, which ones are the most interesting. You can always cut them out and delete them later. But you want to be refining and finding out, okay, what's the best filling for my personal statement right here? Which ones show the most important things that you want them to know about you and your skills and your thoughts and your abilities? When it comes down to a paragraph, really think as well about which ones, show the most about you. The personal statement is personal, and the very best ones get personal. They tell us about you, yourself, and your particular ideas, your opinions. They're all about you. So don't worry about, perceived perceptions. The more personal, the better. Think about, which things that you've read had the biggest impact on you, which ones you love the most or hated the most. It's okay to disagree with anything as long as you say why. The ones that you found interesting, engaging, the one that has shaped you as the potential student in your particular subject. And it's worth saying, one of the worst things that you can do is just list off a load of things that you've read or done. Because at that point, you're not really telling us much about yourself other than you claim to have read a bunch of stuff. When it comes down to it, if we're thinking about a paragraph, just in general terms, point, evidence, explanation, the most important step within the paragraph is the explanation step. I'm sure many of you have probably written an essay before where you've just put all the quotes in, probably your first Shakespeare essay in year 10. I know that was the case with me. You just dump all the quotes in because you think, oh yeah, that's what shows that I know the most about it. You probably got a terrible mark because the explanation step is the most important. It shows us how your evidence proves the point. By talking about the things that you've read and done, why they've influenced you, how they've influenced you, you're explaining how the things you've done show that you are a great university-ready student. Never skimp on that explanation step. The more you talk about the ideas that you found interesting and why, the things that have influenced you and why, the better your statement is going to be. So don't think that you've got to explain the ideas that are in a piece of supercurricular activity to us. Focus more on explaining your reactions to them, your thoughts about them, because that's what's demonstrating you as a great university-ready student, not just your ability to summarize someone else's ideas. We're thinking about quality over quantity here as well. We would much rather see, a few in-depth paragraphs rather than a whole bunch of stuff and trying to list off everything that you've done. Quality over quantity, always, okay? And really don't skimp on that explanation step. The more that you put in for that, the more in-depth that is, the better, because that's going to really show us the sorts of things that we are looking for from a prospective student. When it comes to the first draft, don't worry about that character limit yet. Just get a bunch of stuff down. Just start getting that middle content together. You can always delete things, you can always change things, but the sooner you start getting stuff down on the page, the more comfortable you're going to feel. You can then cherry pick the best stuff. Don't be afraid to get things wrong. Don't be afraid to actually do something and then do something better afterwards. We're not seeing your drafts, we're only going to see the final product. And unfortunately, I think the way the world really is that sometimes we put too much pressure on ourselves to get things right first time. Don't be worried about that. No one else has to see those early drafts. Start getting some ideas down and then you can refine and think and see what works and what doesn't for you. Just get it down on the page or on the computer screen, get that rolling, and you'll find it much easier rather than sitting worrying about it. Don't worry about the introduction to start off with either. Start with the filling of your sandwich and then you can deal with that later on. Put it on there, keep your introduction nice and minimal, just so it does the job, kind of frames everything and holds it together. And the same with any concluding paragraph on your extracurricular activities. Keep that nice and short and sweet and snappy. You can bookend it if you want, or you can put it in the middle, wherever works. But don't worry about some lengthy outro or conclusion either. Funnily enough, the way that I would approach a personal statement is in some ways quite similar to an essay that you would do in an exam. Say you've got 15 minutes to write an essay on a certain subject. Well, in one of those, you wouldn't write a lengthy intro or conclusion, would you? Because you haven't got the time, you need to get straight into the content. Now, funnily enough, a word limit and a time limit are pretty much the same thing in actuality. Because what a time limit does is it limits the amount of words you can write. It just means it varies for different people exactly what that word limit is, depending on how quickly that person writes and thinks. But a time limit and a word limit, they're roughly the same thing. So treat it like one of those exam question essays. Basically, just get straight into the good stuff. We're not looking for style, we're looking for substance. So the sooner you get that substance, the sooner you give us the filling of that sandwich, the happier we're going to be. Final points about approaching it. Start with that general plan. Start thinking about the things that you've done. Just get some ideas on the page. Get rid of anything irrelevant that is not going to be geared towards our target audience, and always think of that target audience. Skip the intro. Don't bother with the character limit yet. We're going to talk about that when we're refining this process in the next video. So that's going to close out our first look at personal statements. In a couple of weeks' time, we'll have another video on this channel looking at refining them, looking at that editing process. So hopefully that will give you some ideas on how to attack it for now. And we'll be back to help you with every single stage of that next part. So thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been useful, and we'll see you next time.